Hello and welcome to Take the Lead Presents Virtual Happy Hour. We're glad you're here. I'm Gloria Feldt, co-founder and president of Take the Lead. We host virtual happy hours on the second Wednesday of each month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We interview women who take the lead in their own lives and careers. So you have 1 hour once a month to boost your career. It's a quick, easy, and fun way to learn what other smart, interesting role model women are up to too. Please tweet your questions to @TakeLeadWomen or type them into the chat box. We want to hear from you and we'll get those questions answered. Take the Lead's mission is nothing less than leadership gender parity by 2025. Visit www.taketheleadwomen.com to find training programs for yourself and your organization. You can also find mentoring, coaching, role model events, and great content to help you on your journey. That's www.taketheleadwomen.com. Now, make yourself comfortable. Grab a cocktail, a mocktail, tea, coffee, glass of water, whatever you like, and sit back for an inspiring virtual happy hour. All right, welcome to the November virtual happy hour of Take the Lead. Our topic tonight is Together We Lead, How Women Build Career Communities. It's a topic that many of you have requested many times over, so I suspect you must have a lot of questions, and therefore I want to encourage you to go ahead and start tweeting them in or putting them into the chat box, because we have got one of the world's leading experts here for you to ask those questions to, and I can't wait to get started with this conversation. So as you heard, I am Gloria Feldt. I'm co-founder and president of Take the Lead, and it is, as always, my honor and pleasure to welcome you to our monthly virtual happy hour. And we want to offer some solutions for women leaders, and spoiler alert, maybe give people some permission to drop the ball. And, and I just want to thank you all for coming here tonight. As you know, it's the mission of Take the Lead to achieve gender parity in leadership in every single sector by 2025. So we have a really big job to do. It's going to take a lot of work, and we do that by training, we do that by mentoring and role modeling, we do that by coaching, and we do that by thought leadership to help us change the narrative in our own heads and enable us to have the kind of intentionality that we need to lead. So it's my pleasure once again to have as my super fabulous co-host, Ms. Reshma Gopaldas. And Reshma is Vice President of Video for SheKnows Media. And she's done all kinds of things in the media world. She's like this fabulous content creator of all kinds. And her work has been, you've seen her work, whether you know it or not, on shows like CNN and Comedy Central with Jon Stewart. And I could go on and on and on. And excuse me, she is also that produces a great deal of content with a focus on women's health and rights. So Reshma is right here in the alignment with Take the Lead. And Reshma, it's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Hey everyone, great to see you again.
You're looking very pink and lively today.
I know. I also had a pink hat. I really wanted you guys to see me.
Oh dear. And with us tonight is our incredibly dynamic guest, Tiffany Dufu. Tiffany, hey there.
Hi there. Hi.
All right. If you don't already know Tiffany, I guarantee that by the time we're done tonight, you are going to want to. And you should.
No pressure.
No, you should want to know Tiffany. Tiffany is founder and CEO of a new venture called The Cru. And we're going to learn all about that. It's a peer coaching service that she launched just in May. It's just begun. So can't wait to hear what's happened so far, what your vision is, where you hope to go with it. It's going to be really cool. Tiffany's life work has been the advancement of girls and women. And she's done that in the political realm when she was the president of the White House Project. She's done that in the more business world as the chief leadership officer of Level League. And she's done it in so many different ways. And again, we're all very aligned with the same kind of mission. So Tiffany, welcome, welcome, welcome. And she's the author of a book that is in fact called Drop the Ball. So we're going to want to hear all that. Might have something to do with the fact that she's a mother of two.
Yes.
And and Tiffany has won many awards, including having been named to Fast Company's League of Extraordinary Women. So thank you for being with us, extraordinary woman, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Well, so according to a LinkedIn study recently, 82% of women surveyed said that it's really important to have a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
But many women say also that they have never had a mentor. And I was actually talking with a male CEO earlier today, and we were discussing the fact that because of the fact that women are only 20% of the top leadership across every sector, it's not always easy to find a mentor that is really in your career path, that can really help you with a female mentor who can really help you with your career path. Now, you don't have to just have a female mentor, but still women are often looking for other women who can help them and guide them along the way. So we've got a lot of work to do. And so Tiffany, I have a first question that I always like to ask people. And it is, how did you get to be you? Give us your story.
My story.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the first part of it, which is in your intro. And by the way, I feel very humbled to be here, and I'll talk later about why I am, because it has to do with you, Gloria. But my life's work is advancing women and girls. That's pretty much why I'm on the planet. And there are reasons. I mean, I don't believe that purpose is, something that just comes from on high. I believe that it's a decision inspired by experience. And the experiences that I've had in my life that have inspired my decision to be committed to women and girls started before I was even born. My mom found out that she was pregnant with me when she was 19 years old. My parents are from Watts, LA. And in the mid-1970s, when I was conceived, Watts was a rough place. It was a rough time. My mom didn't know anything other than the environment that she had grown up in, but she knew there had to be something different. And fortunately, she had an uncle who was an Army recruiter. So between, as my father tells it, the big foreboding uncle and my mom, I was born 9 months later at Fort Lewis Army Base in Tacoma, Washington. My dad eventually went to college on the GI Bill. He eventually earned a PhD in theology. And this was the same person who had to kick a heroin addiction to even be able to pass the physical exam to get into the military. I grew up literally in a house that had a white picket fence around it. When I grew up, my father was a pastor of different churches. He was a counselor. My mom was what I call a non-paid working mom, because all moms are working moms. She just wasn't compensated for her labor. And my parents taught me, through having broken a very vicious cycle of poverty and addiction and violence in one generation, because we live in the greatest country on earth, that if you want something that you've never had before, you're going to have to do something that you've never done before in order to get it. My first kind of feminist flames were sparked when I was a little girl and was reprimanded in Sunday school because the Sunday school teacher asked for a volunteer to pray, which I did because I could pray really well. But she reprimanded me afterward. She explained to me when everyone was filing out that I shouldn't have done that the boys were the leaders, and that when she asked for a volunteer, she meant a boy. And people are always shocked at this story, but to this woman's credit, that was the doctrine. of the church that I grew up in. I just happened to not obviously know this. And so I felt a sense of injustice then and thought there's something going on with gender here and norms that maybe I should be paying attention to. But it was really solidified for me years later when I was 16. My parents went through a divorce, as many families did and still do. But because of what I shared with you about the sacrifice that my mom made, she really struggled after the divorce in ways that my father didn't, because all of the political and social and economic capital that I thought was our family's, I discovered after the divorce was really only our dad's, because he was the one who was college educated, was the beacon in the community, had the brand recognition, had won the awards. And for several years after the divorce, I really struggled in seeing my mom spin back into those very vicious cycles that she had escaped of poverty and addiction and violence with her second husband. And I will tell you, every day I am probably doing everything that I can to get to as many women as I can, because I couldn't save my mom. And the reason why I couldn't save my mom is because you have to be and know that you're the most powerful change agent in your own journey. Fortunately, my mother had instilled that in me by every day telling me, Tiffany, you're so smart and you're so beautiful and you're so loved. So I had a sense of myself and who I was in the world that she had cultivated, but unfortunately, she didn't have the kind of mom that I did. And so I really think that so much of our power is derived from the value that we intrinsically feel about ourselves and what we feel entitled to. So, you know, as a very young adult, I was pretty hell-bent on wanting to support women and understanding and knowing that they were their own change agent. I was hell-bent on my own economic freedom, because I saw firsthand what can happen in women's lives when they choose to yield their economic freedom to someone else. And that turned out to make me a very ambitious person, particularly after I became a mother. Some women do the opposite. You know, they hibernate, they withdraw, right? When they become a mother. When I became a mother, I was like, well, damn. Now I am responsible for myself and these two children. This man is not promised to me, and who knows, he might go crazy. I don't know. And that basically set me on the path. And every professional job that I've had, regardless of my function in that job, has been about advancing women and girls and trying to figure out how do we harness our talent and our ingenuity and our creativity in order to make the world better for everybody. And I think that's what we're missing. And to me, it's very obvious right now, given everything that's going on, that we need women's leadership more than ever before. I could go on, but that's my story in a nutshell.
Tiffany, that was so good. There must be onions in this office, because I started tearing up as you were talking. It's fine, I'm fine. But actually, that kind of leads me. You know, I grew up in a similar family situation in that, but the opposite was that my mother and my grandmother were super strong women, and my grandfather and my father also are men. My grandfather passed away, but who really encouraged female independence and strength. My dad is less good at it than my grandfather was, so that was always a challenge a bit. You know, I think he was like bridging kind of two generations and doesn't quite know how to navigate strong women sometimes, which can lead to conflict. So I think, like, my first question for you is, why do you think there's such a gap between wanting mentorship and guidance and it actually like manifesting? And what can women do about this? Because we all want to like find good leaders and guidance. So how can we make that happen?
Yeah, well, I think that there are a few different gaps. One gap is that for the early part of our lives, women are sent very clear messages and modeled that our performance is paramount. So most girls are very focused on getting good grades, putting our head down, achieving great results. We're, you know, really often taught and are successful via our GPA, the accolades that we get from the adults in our lives through our own individual effort. So it's not as if someone is consistently sending you this message that your leadership journey is a team sport. So I do genuinely believe that most women, for a good chunk of their lives, are able to be externally successful through their own effort and through their hard work, and we're rewarded for that. It's really, to be honest, and it's not really until we get into the workplace where politics really emerge in a way, and where putting your head down and achieving really great results is completely insufficient to you being successful. But no one, when you graduate from college and get that diploma, no one says, okay, now the rules of engagement around how you're going to be successful are changing. So not only do you need to show up and do a great job, you need to actually look up at the other people who can brag about you, who can promote you, who can tell other people that you're doing a good job. Developing those relationships is something that is really critical and vital. So I think part of the challenge is that women genuinely don't know and aren't conditioned or socialized to understand the importance of that. In fact, I would argue that part of my own ability to attract and develop relationships with mentors and sponsors, and I want to talk about those things and what they are, was related to the culture that I grew up in and was quite accidental. You see, I was the preacher's daughter. There were always people inside of our house. I'm also African-American, which basically means that as a little girl, I spent a lot of time sitting on a floor or in a chair getting my hair braided, right? By the time you take out cornrows, wash, blow dry, cornrow bead, like 5 or 6 hours have passed. So what is my mom doing while that Sister, Williams is coming over and dropping off the sweet potato pie, and Sister Rollins is coming by and they're sitting on the couch. And of course, I'm a little girl, so I'm not allowed to participate in grown folks' conversation. But you better believe I was soaking up the energy and soaking up the wisdom of being around women who had been around the block many more times than I had. So that was part of my cultural upbringing, was that you reach out to elders, that you learn from elders. And so I always felt that it was important for me to cultivate those kinds of relationships. My youngest sister has a different philosophy. She just says that I'm very boring and I never want to learn a lesson myself. She's the complete opposite. She doesn't want to take anybody's advice. She just wants to go learn it, fall flat on her face. And I'm like, actually, no, if Auntie Gloria says don't do that, I'd rather just not do that. So it's because of those two things that I was able to really focus on building a network of mentors and building relationships with sponsors, in addition to my own insecurity about two things that I discovered when I graduated from college and got into the workforce. One was that I didn't have an Ivy League degree behind my name and didn't really, to be honest with you, understand how that was capital in this world until I saw some of my colleagues leveraging that and using that, and thought to myself, oh dear, I should have thought to go to Harvard or Yale. That never crossed my mind. And the second was that I saw my colleagues in the workplace getting support from their parents when it came to making introductions, giving them advice about how to navigate the workplace. And I didn't have parents who had those kinds of experiences or the network to be able to support me. So I very quickly realized, wow, if you don't have the pedigree, both in terms of your parents and what they can do for you or the college that you went to, you better figure out how to be a superstar. Because if there was one thing I learned very quickly, it's that if somebody opens a door for you and you run through that door, not hop, not skip, not walk, but you run, they will remember that and they'll continue to open doors. They'll tell other people about you. And so, to be honest, I've just been kind of passed from one mentor to the next. I'm the cumulative investment of a lot of women, including Gloria, which is why I'm very, very honored and happy to be here. She's someone who, when someone, when you fill out a survey or someone says, who's invested in you, I always put, her name, because she's someone that I've looked up to for a long time.
And that feeling is mutual. It's mutual. Well, so I was going to ask you about how you have actually accessed that kind of mentoring in your own life. But boy, did you ever just give us a great answer to that. So I'm going to ask you how.
Well, there's more to that. There's more practical, there's a practical side to that.
Okay.
One is that when I graduated from college, I decided that I would send an email to a couple of professors because I hadn't planned on coming back to the University of Washington, and they had invested in me and I wanted to keep them updated. Over time, I have continued that same email distribution list. Okay, I graduated in the late 90s, so it's been, I don't know, 30 years, however long it's been. And what happens is that every time I go to a new job or I have a new experience, and then I'm leaving that job or I'm leaving that experience, I say, hey, everybody, I want to stay in contact with you. Can I add you to my list of the people that I want to be a part of my village? And I send them what I call village updates twice a year. So there's probably about 400 people on this list now that have been a part of my journey since whenever they joined the Village Update list. Some of these people have seen me graduate from college, get married, have children, move from Seattle to Boston to New York. And I have to say, people just want to be a part of your story. They just want to know that the investment that they make, they're going to get a return on. And every day I try to ensure that the entire world gets a return on their investment. But there's nothing like keeping people updated. And of course, this was before social media. And now, of course, we have all kinds of groups and you can tweet things out. But people still say, especially now that you're a public figure, I kind of like that I'm on the email list. Right, that you send out. So I think that's a really important way of keeping people engaged and cultivating them. But I think the most important thing is really making people look good when they when they give you opportunities so that they'll continue to invest, and doing what your mentors tell you to do. Just follow their instructions.
Just listen to us.
Really hard for some people,
It's hard for some people, but it's like they're there because they're trying to help. They're trying to help.
Well, I mean, I often say that I am a product of the fact that many people saw more in me than I saw in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And pushed me and prodded me and almost forced me to take opportunities that I would never have had the foresight or the intention necessarily to raise my hand and say, I want to try to do that. So I've never heard it put exactly like you just did, Tiffany, though. But I think, the words that you were using, like people have invested in you, people, and it's an important investment, investment of trust, of belief in you that you can accomplish something. And so, yeah, sure. Then why don't we loop that back to the Cru then?
Yeah.
And how did that come about?
Yeah, so I am so obsessed with advancing women and girls that I say yes to every woman that reaches out to me. Okay, so you can DM me on Twitter and say, I want to spend time with you. And I say yes. Mm-hmm. That means that I meet with women every Tuesday and Thursday at 9, 10, and 11 a.m. When I'm not traveling, sometimes I squeeze in somebody on Friday. I meet in person or over a Zoom hangout chat just like this. I've done this for 5 or 6 years. I've met with over 1,000 women in person.
Wow.
And
amazing.
It's my favorite part of my life. And I have children and a great husband. My favorite part of my life is listening
to... Do they know this? If they are they
listening to women's stories. And it's particularly important for someone who's constantly talking about women and talking to women and writing about women to actually take the time to sit and listen to women one-on-one, because you get a lot of insight about our psychology, about our barriers and challenges and the opportunities. At the end of almost every single one of these meetings, I always ask people, what's next? Because in order for me to remain accessible, I can really only see a woman once. I can't take multiple meetings. I would mess up it would all come crumbling down. Okay. And so I asked them, so this is great. You need a plan. We've agreed, sister. Who's going to help you with the plan? Okay. Who's going to hold you accountable to this plan? Who's going to invest their economic and political capital on you in order to help you to thrive. You might have reached out to me because you saw my book or you saw me speak, but I can give you the list of all of the women that have been supporting me for a long time. I've got a crew and you need one too. And I talk about this concept of the crew. Sometimes there's a deer in headlights. Sometimes there's, okay, everybody's talking about this sense of a group of people who are committed to you. Some people say, I think it's called an advisory council or an executive council. You know, people have different names for it, but I don't know where to find those women. Sometimes, and more recently, I had a woman say to me, okay, Tiffany, I know I need a crew. I understand the concept of a crew, but let me keep it real with you. By the time I go to enough cocktail receptions, conferences, events, collect enough business cards, schedule the coffees, the teas, the lunches to sit down and have a conversation with a woman to determine whether or not we can support each other, we're compatible, we're viable, then somehow miraculously get 10 or 12 of us all together for these series of dinners you're talking about because we're this amazing crew. Honey, I have a job. I have a dog. I have a parent with a diagnosis. I don't have time for this. Like, you're a professional feminist. That's why you have time to do all of this. And it was a very good point. And I had in that moment what I call a Tiffany's epiphany. Some people call it aha moments, which was, Tiffany, stop trying to teach women how to find a crew and just find the crew for them.
That makes it a lot easier for everyone.
You just find the crew for them and they can take it from there. And that was the insight that caused me to launch The Cru. The URL is findyourcrew.com, which is CRU, because CREW was taken. And in its most simplest form, it's a peer coaching service for women. And the way that it works is that you apply to become a member of The Cru. And we take the data that you submit to us, your personality, your values, your demographics, what you hope to achieve in the next 12 to 18 months, and we match you with 9 women in your city. The 10 of you become a crew, and you collaborate to ensure that you all thrive and meet your life goals. You do this through quarterly in-person gatherings, but also through a digital portal for which you upload your intentions, your goals to the portal. Your crew can see them. They can see the progress that you're making on them. And it basically gives women the intentionality and the accountability and the commitment that they need in order to help propel them forward. So that's what we launched in May, and it's been a whirlwind. We did match the first 100 women over the summer. I introduced them all to one another over the fall, and we'll launch another round in the spring, particularly because there are almost 500 women now that are waiting to be matched.
Wow.
Tiffany, that's so interesting. And I have so many questions about it, but the first is, I think that appreciation list you talked about, like who made you who you are, who invested the time. I think that's like an amazing exercise for all of us to do once in a while. And I do think that can help lead you to your crew in a way. You're like, oh my goodness, I have all these people who have made me who I am today, good, bad, whatever. So my question though is, you know, how have you created communities with like other women, like giving them strategies to work around, you know, boundaries with race, age, orientation, and more?
Right.
So one of the core tenets of The Cru that I think should be a core tenet of everybody and everything is around the value of diversity. And so we intentionally match women together who come from different backgrounds. And we do that because we spend a lot of time these days with people who are very much like us, our friends, our alum networks. And I actually think that the world, and certainly our democracy, would be enhanced by people really connecting across boundaries. Now, in The Cru, we manage that diversity and that difference by layering on a culture, right?
Yep.
So we have the equivalent of a code of conduct. We talk about what it means to make a crew move. You have an identity, you have a crew number. Each class is named after a constellation. This first class is the constellation Phoenix. So the first crew is Phoenix 1.
Oh, that's great.
And we have core beliefs around abundance, around reciprocity. And so you're given literally a physical playbook that tells you what it means to be a part of this community. and what it means to appreciate and value one another across difference. So it factors in diversity across boundaries, but also factors in the psychology of women. So for example, you're encouraged to make crew moves, which involves everything from tweeting out someone's idea to purchasing a ticket to someone's fundraising gala that they're on the board, you know, of this nonprofit, but only if it makes you warm and fuzzy. You're not allowed to make a crew move if you just feel obligated to do so. So in some ways, we're disrupting some of that conditioning that we're taught since we're little girls to say yes and do and to please others. But in a very real way, we're trying to create a new ship. You know, it's not your friend, it's not your family, it's your crew. And cruise ship is different from friendship. And we just try to put some boundaries around it and so that people can know how to operate and how to communicate. And we even say to them, if you want to become friends, that's great. But we highly encourage you to have very explicit conversations about what friendship means, because you're all coming from different backgrounds and different cultures. And what a friend means to one person might be different from what a friend means to someone else. And we would hate for you to have mismatched expectations. So we talk very explicitly about what it means to be in a diverse community and how open communication can help to mitigate the challenges, but that it's worth it. It's worth it.
Well, I want to keep drilling down on this because this is really fascinating, and I'm particularly fascinated with the fact that there is so much intentionality, which is my current favorite word, and my current most deeply held belief about the characteristic that we need to be working on as women if we're ever going to actually achieve parity in any realm. So I want to be drilling down into those. You know, like in a radio program, we're at mid program right now. So that means it's time for me to say again that to welcome people again, if you just tuned in, that you are participating in, you are participating in Take the Lead's monthly virtual happy hour, which happens on the second Tuesday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm Gloria Feldt, co-founder and president of Take the Lead, and my co-host here is Reshma Gopaldas. And our guest tonight is the amazing Tiffany Dufu. Now, I just told you that we have a virtual happy hour every month, but that's not exactly true next month, because we decided everybody was just going to be way too busy in December. And so we're going to take a hiatus, but it's going to be the kind of hiatus that will enable us to really think about who would you like to be able to ask your questions of? Because we love doing the live virtual happy hour. It means that when you tune in, you get to actually ask these amazing women the questions that are most burning on your mind. So we want to take a little time and reflect on who do we want to have as a virtual happy hour guest? Who do you want us to have as a virtual happy hour guest? And what topics do you want us to cover on the virtual happy hour in 2019? So what I'd like to ask you to do is to tweet all of that to us at Take Lead. Or you can go ahead and start putting it in the chat box tonight, and we'll be putting some surveys out as well. So just start thinking about that. And we're all going to rest up a little bit in December, but we're not going to rest up too much, because I do want you to know that Take the Lead is hosting an incredible event with Gloria Steinem on a matinee of the play Gloria, A Life. And it is the story of Gloria Steinem's life and the journey that she has had as an activist for women and a feminist, and what that has meant to her. And she will be there that afternoon to lead the audience in a group discussion. And you can go to our, the Eventbrite right now. I believe that you will find that link in the chat box. And I hope you will go and look and you'll see, and it is a fundraiser. And we would really welcome your support, but there are all levels of tickets, many levels of tickets. So you can pick what sounds best to you, what fits your budget. And if you choose to come to the VIP reception, you'll also get to hang out with a woman who I incredibly much admire, Daryl Roth, who is probably the leading woman of the theater in New York. And in fact, the play is at the Daryl Roth Theater. She has produced productions like Kinky Boots and other blockbusters, Tony award-winning blockbusters. And she is an incredibly lovely, wonderful person. So she's going to come to the VIP reception before the performance. And there are lots of other bells and whistles. So I just encourage you, invite you, would love to see you on December 15th at the Matinee for Gloria, a Life in New York. Okay, let me see. Did I forget to tell you anything else? I think that's what I needed to say. And I want to go to a question from Priya.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The question from Priya is, I like the fact that keeping in touch and running through doors opened for you actually encouraged you. Further, how do you deal with people who have little faith in what you can accomplish? How do you deal with the naysayers in your life? That's a great question.
It's a really great question. So one honest response to that is that I kind of move them from the recesses of my memory very quickly. So, and I'll tell you an honest, true story that had to do with a question that I frequently get when I speak around women not supporting other women and how you manage that and deal with that. A few years ago, I was at a conference, I was asked that question, and I used to always start answering that question by saying, I'm a cumulative investment of a lot of women. So I know this is a real scenario, but I just want to let everyone know that I've had a lot of women who have treated me really well and have invested in me. And after I was done, I had a friend who I had invited. I was in Arizona. I had a friend who I had invited to come and hear me speak. And she felt the need to stand up in front of the entire audience and say, I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. I just heard Tiffany say that all of these women have invested in her, and that's very true. But I just want all of you to know that as her friend, I can tell you that a lot of women have also stabbed Tiffany in the back.
Oh my goodness.
And I could tell you the names of every single one. Now, how Tiffany does not remember and does not recall these stories is part of the reason why we all love her. But just so you know, she's had the same experience that you've had, that yours just stood up and that you talked about. So part of it, I think, is really honing in on the people who see you in the way that Gloria described. And to sometimes people don't know how to communicate to you in a way that may seem very loving. In fact, some of the people who have invested the most in me were the toughest on me. Those were some of the ones who, I'm crying in the bathroom thinking, why hasn't she fired me by now? But they've been some of the people who have invested the most. And so I think it's really important to develop a sense of discernment and to gravitate toward the people who are setting very high expectations for you, continuing to give you feedback and keeping you in their communities and in their networks. The naysayers, to try as best you can not to spend time with them. Mm-hmm. Have another voice in your head that's communicating an opposite message. If for some reason they're in your workplace or someplace where you can't avoid them entirely, but do everything that you can to try to create some level of kryptonite against that and against them. There are enough people in the world who know how badass you are. Mm-hmm. I would try to spend as little time as possible developing strategies for the other ones.
Tiffany, that's great. And I actually want to just add on to that, because you covered so many about, you said when you can't get away from it in your workplace. And I actually would love to use an example of someone I work with who's a young female producer.
Who's hopefully not watching.
No, well, I'll show it to her later. But she started as the front desk receptionist at my company. And she now is an associate video producer. She does all kinds of social media art direction. She makes beauty videos, everything. And even to this day, I can see with her, she still sometimes feels that people around her think of her as that person you go to get your office supplies or this and that, and undervalue her. And even in her interaction with me, sometimes she said, we have a really big branded video coming up where you have to illustrate all these art things. And I said to her, if you can't do all of it, I can hire someone. And so she said to me, which I think is a great piece of advice. Not that I undervalued her at all, but clearly, you know, sometimes those things are hard to get away from, that way of thinking. She said, "Hey, Resh, I understand if you have to hire someone else, but I'd really love a chance to do this." And so immediately I was like, "Oh, I am absolutely giving you a chance. I was just trying to say to you, if it's too much that you have to illustrate in too short of a time, I will hire help for you. But you are the lead designer on this." So Priya, what I would say is, if you experience people naysaying, just be like, "Hey, I'd love to try that." What are they going to say? They can say no, but at least they know, like, oh, she wants to get in this. So the best way to get away from naysayers is to prove them wrong.
Well, and you know, the saying, nobody attributes more power to you than you attribute to yourself.
Exactly.
And the problem is that we are, I think, particularly in a world where there still is implicit bias that tends to cause women to back off, to be more cautious, to be unwilling to try to put themselves forward because they don't want to get slapped down. We have responsibility to learn to just go ahead and walk into that and learn to build our courage muscles by doing it and not letting people push us back. But it's a hard lesson sometimes. It's a very difficult thing. You have to be able to take that first step. And so having someone, or I guess what I'm really trying to say is it's incumbent upon all of us who have been able to start building those muscles to help the next woman have those opportunities, because if you don't have an opportunity to try and fail, you never grow.
That's it.
Exactly. Failure is very important.
It's very important. So I have another question here. So actually, you'll love this question, Tiffany.
Okay.
Love the idea of the Cru. How can people be added to the wait list?
You just go to findyourcru.com, and Cru is CRU.com, and click apply and enter your information. It's actually a great question because we will prioritize based on the order that people apply. So everyone who applied for the first round, will prioritize them. So the sooner that you apply, the higher likelihood your chances of being matched. Great question.
Fantastic. I thought you might like that question. Yes, indeed. So it seems a little impossible the week after a big election not to talk about the ascension of women right now, and the whether or not there was a blue wave is that's one question. The real wave was women. The real wave was women moving into office. And so here we have another year of the woman. We've been here, we've done it, we've got the t-shirt. And I'd love to get the thoughts actually from both of you about how can this whole principle of mentorship and helping and supporting other women, how can it help us not go backwards? Because we have seen this pattern before where women ascend and then the next election they're not there. They're not voting, they're not participating. You can't complain. If you don't run, you can't win. If you don't vote, you can't complain. And I'd love to see us break that pattern. I'd love to see us continue the trend line forward. We're just less than 25% of Congress. I mean, it's a big thing to be happy about, but it's certainly not the end of the line. And Tiffany, with your experience, and Reshma, with your experience, what do you think is helpful or necessary to to stay galvanized and to keep taking action on their behalf?
Yeah, first of all, I am very excited for several reasons, but one is that, there are some people who have been working on trying to increase the number of women across all, sectors of society, but certainly in politics for a long time. And what I was so heartened by was to see so many women that we had trained at the White House Project that have been on our radar running, even if they didn't win in 2018. So unfortunately, the upside of our current political leadership is that it's quite frankly lowered the bar. In women's minds around what political leadership can be and who can be it, right? So I know so many women who are looking and saying, well, oh my goodness, if that person can do it, certainly I can do it. And the stakes now are very high. They've been raised for women, and women are responding. So, I think that the momentum will continue for several reasons. One is that we got some key wins. And there's nothing like you digging in, putting in the work and the effort, supporting a candidate to then see her elected that gets you addicted to the political process. And to the fact that you can actually change things, my goodness, because we had some pretty significant upsets, particularly given the state of politics in our nation. I think the second piece is there were the women who were running, but there's also the story of all of the women behind them. All of the campaign organizers, all of the women who had never been engaged before that were knocking on doors and canvassing. And I think that once you get involved at that level, it's very hard to then not be engaged because you understand the importance of it. And then unfortunately, because, in my political opinion, we still don't have control of all three. How we made some progress, but there's still a lot of progress to go, and we still have our current administration. Unfortunately, we're still going to be moving backward in some ways when it comes to policies and when it comes to practices. And I think that some of those back steps are just going to push us forward and motivate us even further. So the negative side is that I actually think it's going to get worse in terms of what we're going to be up against. But I think that is going to propel us even forward. I'm an eternal optimist, so not as bad as my dad. I have actually seen a bad movie, and he's never even seen a bad movie. He called me this afternoon. That's why it's on my. He's like, "Well, baby, did you see this movie? My heart was palpitating." I'm like, "Dad, you say every movie's a good movie." But I do. I feel very heartened. And Gloria, I'm of course fascinated to know what you think. And Reshma, you weigh in. But
Yeah,
I feel so. When I woke up on Wednesday morning, I felt good.
me too. I mean, so one thing I do now, because I do think the current situation in our country has really motivated people to be like, if that can be, then I can be. Yeah. And I've also noticed it's a good thing, if you know strong women in your life and they're even this good at public speaking and or great leaders, you should say to them, you should run. Because it takes one person having faith in you for you to be like, oh, I actually could see myself doing that. I actually had thought I love public speaking and everything. And I've, worked in women's health and rights for so long. And so I said, probably a few months ago, I was like, maybe I should run. And then I decided, I was like, no, maybe I'll make really good videos for people who run. So I know my skill set and know what I want to do.
There's the one good thing about life that nobody tells you early on is that you'll have a chance to do all of those if you want to.
That's true. That's true.
There's a time and a place where in your life where any one of those may just be the right thing for you to do. And it would probably be a good thing if every single person in this country ran for office once, at least.
Once, just to get the experience.
The experience, the lessons that you learn, the things that you learn about how democracy works and how it doesn't work and the work that really goes into people who run for office have my admiration no matter what, because it's not easy. It's not easy.
It's not.
So to move back to the a little closer to the topic, although I do think these things are related, and that it's about having your crew, or having, in Take the Lead's language, having your cohort. We have been building multiple cohorts of approximately 50 women each in specific fields. And we have found that to be possibly the most powerful thing that we can do. It's not that the skills that we build are unimportant, and it's not that the transformation of power concepts isn't extremely important. To me, that's one of the most important things that women need to do in order to want to embrace their power and want to do things like run for office or hold their hand up and say, I want to be in the leadership of this company, or I want to start my own company, or whatever it might be. But what I found in observing, and I'll tell you, I wish I had been prescient enough to understand that this was what was going to happen, is that when we have these programs for women, and they're quite immersive over a period of about 3 months or so. And I'm so thrilled with all the content we're giving them and all the great curriculum and to a person, they will almost always say afterward that the most important and powerful thing that they got was they got their cohort. They got this group of people that they know they can rely on for anything, whether it's personal or professional. They hire each other, they sponsor each other, they serve on each other's boards, they put out a call if somebody needs somebody to help with an event or solve a problem, or they're looking for a particular kind of person for their organization. They'll call upon their sisters, and I just find it to be the most incredibly phenomenal thing. And so if I may just comment here so that people know, we are launching 50 Women Can Change the World in Nonprofits in Arizona this very week. And we are actually going to do that in 2 waves. So if you wanted to be part of this cohort, you still will have a chance to jump into it in January and then be with the rest of the group. And there will be 50 ultimately in that cohort. And we'll be starting 50 Women in Finance in New York. In January, we'll be starting 50 Women in Journalism in New York. In February, 50 Women in Healthcare is on the drawing boards, and many, many more. So I say that because I just want to encourage everybody who's interested to join a cohort like that to go to our website, taketheleadwomen.com, and look for the page. Actually, you'll find the link directly to the 50 Women Can Change the World programs in the chat box if you're interested in finding out more. But I'm super excited about those. I'm like, I want to do them everywhere. And Tiffany, maybe we have some opportunities to collaborate here, because I think what you're doing is just fantastic. And I really want to learn more from you about how you came up with some of the specific tools that you're giving women. I mean, this is obviously much more than say, I mean, and the Lean In circles have been great. They've been wonderful for many people, but what you're doing is obviously much more focused and specific than those kinds of more informal peer mentoring circles. And even we have something called Glass Breakers Take the Lead Take the Lead in our it's basically an online algorithmic mentor matching program that you sort of come and go when you meet somebody or you don't. It's kind of like like swipe left or swipe right kind of thing. But Tiffany, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is really deeply thoughtful, and I'd love to know more about why and those the concepts that you are instilling in your Cru program.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was on the launch team for Lean In. I was a very big proponent of the Lean In circles. There was a book, Cheryl wanted to create a movement, and I felt very strongly that the way to do that is through connecting women on the ground. We know the importance of mentorship and peer support. So I'm a big proponent of Lean In and think that the Lean In circle model is fabulous, particularly when you need a template to scale within your organization. What I found was that women still didn't have, in order to start a Lean In circle, you still need the women. Right? So the Cru was launched to solve a very specific pain point around, I don't have the time or the bandwidth, right? So one of the women who I interviewed said, I applied to this because you've basically taken the work out of networking, okay?
Oh, that's great.
Which I don't have the bandwidth to do. But what you're talking about, and I thought it was fascinating to hear you talk about the importance of intentionality, because when we asked women, and we interviewed hundreds of women after they had applied to the Cru, we asked them, what do you most hope to receive from a Cru? And the 3 top responses to that question, number 1, intentionality.
Whoa, really?
Yes.
I'll be
wow.
Yeah. Basically what they said was, I'm at a point in my life where I don't have time for superficiality. I need meaning. I want substance. The last thing I want is to have to walk into a room full of people that I don't know with, a glass of wine and make small talk that's not even valuable. Okay. Their second most popular response was accountability. I've achieved a certain level of success in my life and career, but because I've lost a little bit of track of myself, I need someone who is going to help propel me forward, because in most of my relationships that are important to me, I'm serving as the caregiver. Even in my professional relationships, I am taking care of my team. I'm taking care of my boss. From my perspective, it just feels like I'm here to take care of everybody else. And the third was commitment. I really don't have the bandwidth for flakiness. I want to be a part of something where we're all coming to the table and agreeing that we're going to do this. That's what I need to move myself forward. That's what I most hope to receive. So to be honest with you, all we did was take what they told us they really wanted in a crew and embedded those values into every single part of the experience.
Wow.
Amazing.
So Reshma, I'm noticing that we're getting to the point where we probably have time for one more question for Tiffany before we close out, and I'd like to throw that to you.
Yeah.
What's your question?
Well, actually, Tiffany, I was looking, so the mantra on your website homepage is, if you want something you've never had before, you'll have to do something you've never done before in order to get it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And, you know, you've talked so much about all the women you've helped, but like, you know, how can women find those women? Just explain that mantra. Like, why did you pick that for the main mantra on your page?
Yeah, I picked that because I'm someone who was taught to follow the rules. And to not take the kind of risks that are required in order for us to really innovate. And that mantra always reminds me what my parents taught me, that it may be an experiment. I was having this conversation with my father. I'll bring it back to kids. Years ago when I was pregnant with my second child, and I didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl, but I was telling my father what I hoped for this child. And during the conversation, I asked my dad, Daddy, when mom was pregnant with me, what did you hope for? And my dad got kind of quiet, and I felt bad for a moment that I had asked the question. And I said, oh, Daddy, so you don't have to answer. I was just being like really sentimental. He says, no, baby. He says, I want to answer. He says, it's just that I'm afraid, I'm embarrassed of my answer to the question. And I said, well, how could you possibly be embarrassed of what you hoped for me? It had to have been something positive. And he said it was. He says, when your mom was pregnant with you, what I most hoped for was that you would graduate from high school and not get pregnant. He said, when your mom was pregnant with you, I didn't even know women like you, like the woman you are now. I didn't know women like that existed. He said, I just hoped. And that was such a powerful moment for me, because we say a lot in the women's space that you can't be what you can't see. But what my father taught me is that it is possible to manifest something that you haven't quite imagined. We don't really know what is in store in the future, but that the only way to achieve that is to do something that you've never done before, right? In order to achieve a different result. And so that's what I try to do each day. It's why I've done a lot of different things to try to advance women and girls. I'm like, I focused on millennial for 4 years and getting them into leadership. I've tried to get women to run for office. I helped to get a girls' school off the ground in Seattle, you know, in my hometown. I mean, I've done almost everything. I've tried to raise money. I'm now on the board of Girls Who Code. I've been on the board of Girl Scouts USA. I'm on the board of Simmons University. It's like, what can we do? Just throw it at me, you know, because all I care about is getting us to a place where we have more women sitting around the tables of power.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Your insights have been just incredibly helpful. We're getting lots of good feedback for that. And I just can't thank you enough for what you're doing, what you've done, and what you're doing, and your mentorship of women writ large, not just individual women, but helping women, all of us, to know our power, to advance it, and in a very, very practical ways. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much, Reshma, for co-hosting once again, being so bright and pink today. So I love it.
My pleasure.
I love it. And I just want to remind everyone that they can find The Cru at, what is it again, Tiffany?
Findyourcrew.com.
findyourcrew.com. Go.
I'm on it right now.
Get on that wait list right away. And
I hope I get in.
you can find Take the Lead at taketheleadwomen.com. And be sure to check out our 50 Women Can Change the World programs, because it might just be a cohort that will be your crew. Who knows? Who knows? We will find out. And I can't wait to see many of you on December 15th at the performance of Gloria a Life. Come back in January. Remember, we're not having a virtual happy hour in December because we want to think about who would be the most amazing people that you want to meet, that you want to be able to ask your questions of, and and what would be the topics that you would most like for us to bring to you. So be sure that you let us know via social media of any kind. We'll be keeping track of that. We'll be doing surveys. We'll be asking you in many different ways. So come back in January for the new year, a new virtual happy hour. Same time though, second Wednesday of the month, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. We figure it's always happy hour somewhere. So thank you so much, and power to you. Thanks for joining Take the Lead Presents Virtual Happy Hour. Be sure to tune in again next month. Remember, it's the second Wednesday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. 1 hour, once a month, to boost your career. Until then, power to you.